With a career in the jazz industry that spans over 30 years, American musician Andy Narell has made a name for himself in the steel band industry, having brought the steelpan instrument into the genre of jazz and creating his own sound, having collaborated with the likes of Mike Stern, Etienne Charles, Thomas Dyani, and so many more over the years. He was in the country for a short while, attending the International Marimba and Steelpan Festival, as well as a performance in Johannesburg. He's a regular visitor of South Africa, and he's got a huge following of music enthusiasts in the country. And Andy paid us a visit in the studio. He joins me to talk about his musical journey.
Thanks for inviting me.
Andy, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Much appreciated. And you've been with the school children. It's a very important project of yours, this.
Yeah, well, I'm doing a lot of teaching all over the world, but this one here in Johannesburg, it was my 4th year as a patron and an adjudicator at the International Marimba and Steelpan Festival. It's an incredible event. It's the largest marimba festival in the world. There were 1,800 young people playing. There are 80 schools represented. There are 225 performances in 2 days. And it's marimba and steelpan and drums and djembes and percussion and singing and dancing and a few other instruments too. And it's just 2 days of incredibly joyous performances of young people from all over South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho. It's an incredible event.
Yeah, and of course, the exciting thing is you being involved as a steelpan player. It's a unique position for you personally as a steelpan player. It's not a popular instrument, this?
Yeah, well...
In jazz music, or is it?
Well, I mean, as far as the festival goes, you know, steel bands are really growing in South Africa. There must be a couple of hundred steel bands now in all the schools and community center programs.
But I'm talking about it in, you know, from a professional musician point of view, that it's not many...
Practitioners.
Practitioners in a profession and top, you know, performers who use this particular instrument.
Very few. And when I started playing jazz, there was you know, I started as a 15-year-old kid. I was playing and I started going to jazz clubs in New York, and there was really nobody actively doing it in jazz. There had been a few guys in Trinidad who had already delved into improvising. But they were still working within the steel band, and they weren't going out into the world of jazz. And it was something I had to find my own way early on.
But for you, what was the appeal? I mean, and it's a Caribbean instrument.
Right.
And where did it click for you that actually we need this kind of instrument in the genre of jazz?
Well, first I was hooked on the instrument already. You know, I started playing when I was 7 years old. My dad was doing community center work with street gangs in New York, and he hit on steel band music as a program activity that the kids could get into. He started 20 steel bands in one center and started spreading it around to other centers, and he organized the first steel band festival in America in 1962, and so my brother and I got some friends together and we started playing, and we just, you know, I spent my childhood playing 2 or 3 nights a week steel band gigs. But then I discovered jazz by way of the radio. Basically, my parents gave me an FM radio, and I clicked onto a station that was broadcasting from Harlem called WLIB. And people like Billy Taylor, who was a great jazz pianist and the foremost musicologist of jazz alive at the time, was a DJ for 4 hours a day, and I was talking about the musicians, and that's when I felt like, well, I want to do that. I want to be like those guys. I want to be like Miles. You know, those are my idols. Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Bill Evans and Elvin Jones and Cannonball Adderley, that whole generation of musicians.
So then you were drawn into jazz, and here you had the skill already of playing steel pans, and you said, let me interpret the music through my abilities, or what happened for you?
Yeah, I just started trying to learn to improvise, and then I started going to jazz clubs and trying to sit in with people and realizing that I wanted to play this instrument in a jazz context. And that there was very little opportunity for that, and it led me early on into writing my own music and forming my own band, because there was nobody. Established jazz artists kind of mostly saw steelpan as a novelty. It wasn't something as a real soloing instrument. And you know, as far as learning jazz, it's a lifelong study. I'm still learning how to play jazz.
You know, I was listening to one performer playing steel pans recently in the jazz format, and somehow I likened it to a piano, actually, that you have got to have to reason, think, and play like you're playing the piano.
It's it's not a drum in the traditional sense. It's an instrument that has all the notes of the scale like the piano.
Yeah.
And I'm playing, my soloing instrument is a 3-octave chromatic instrument, which is pretty much like a saxophone or something like that. And we have the full range of voices of the orchestra, because the people that created this created an orchestra, a steel band, from soprano all the way down to bass instruments. And it's completely, it started off as just beating rhythm on paint cans, and within 20 years they had created all these voices of an orchestra, and all chromatic and all tuned to the Western scale, so that you could play all kind of polyphonic Western music.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are, and it's evolved. You know, the guy who makes my instruments is a guy called Elie Manette, who's 89 years old, and he's from Trinidad, and he's like the father of the instrument. He created many of the designs of the.
So it's relatively a new instrument, then. You know, that's emerging as a popular instrument. How old would you say it is?
The 1940s was just beating rhythm on paint cans, and and then it evolved. You know, within a few years, they were starting to play melody, and they had a primitive melodic instrument with 12 or 13 notes, and they had some background pans with 2 or 3 notes, and a bass with just 1 note. But within 10 years, they'd had differentiated all the voices, and they were, 1951, they sent a band to London and Paris to play, and by the late 50s, all the instruments were chromatic.
Now, this Steelpan and your appreciation for jazz, and something that you then practiced and played with other jazz performers, took you around the world, and ultimately you ended up living in France, Paris. How's life like there now?
Life is great. I'm actually living in Paris, and also in a little fishing village in St. Lucia called Laborie, where I've been spending a few months a year. And now we're going to have our own place there, and I have there's a steel band program. I'm teaching 2 groups of kids, and we love it there.
And you have been producing documentaries, I gather, as well.
Yeah, well, there have been a couple documentaries made about my work. One was done for French TV, and another one was done by German TV about a project I did with the WDR Big Band. I brought a 25-piece steel band from Paris, and they had the 14 horns of their big band, which were arranged by their musical director. And then we brought Relator, the great calypsonian from Trinidad, up to sing with this 40-piece band that we put together. And the other film, the French one, was done in Trinidad and New York, and it's about my work with Trinidad All Stars and Relator again, and also about the whole story of the steel pan and the social context, and you know, the huge orchestra. You get to see the huge orchestras with 130 players.
Well, music is fun to make. You make friends, and you are connected with a lot of people. But then there's the world out there. I was asking about France, that you live there, but there seems to be trouble or tensions between communities in France. And your home country, the United States, was facing its own elections. I wonder, I mean, as a globally traveled person who also commutes between St. Lucia and France, and is American, and comes to South Africa, and goes everywhere in the world, you are concerned, I would like to believe, about these things. What do you think is going on in France? And then let's talk about the U.S. in a moment.
Yeah, well, it's just, we live in a time where, I mean, I think a lot of people are very afraid, and we have a lot of people in the political arena who are exploiting people's fears in order to advance a very anti-immigrant, racist, almost fascist agenda. And it's very frightening to me to see what's happening in America. It's
you're talking about Donald Trump.
But not just Donald Trump. But Donald Trump, to me, is sort of a logical conclusion to where things have been going. You know, that this would emerge, that he would actually emerge and take over the Republican Party, because they've been pandering to this for a long time, to these kind of people. And it's real scary when you see that these same type of people that were able to sway an election in England, and that they decided to leave the European Union out of fear of immigrants, basically. And France is obviously with the terrorist attacks that have happened in France, it's very frightening. And I hope that the country doesn't react that way in terms of saying like we're going to build a wall and we're going to ban all the Muslims from coming in and stuff, because these kind of proposals are just we would have considered them so completely outlandish. I still do, but there he is. He's a major party candidate with proposals like that, and it's really frightening.
I wonder what your colleagues in the music business think and feel about this, because music over time, notwithstanding the divisions of the past, has served to unite people, across communities, across cultures, and you've had that experience.
I don't think you'll find too many supporters for Trump in the music community. Music, we're about something else here, and I more and more I feel that music is a powerful force for, not just as itself and the enjoyment that we get from it, but as a force in bringing people together. And I work particularly like with the festival here in Joburg. I'm traveling all the time working with steel bands. And one of the amazing thing about Steelband, it was created by kids who were from like neighborhoods that were like the townships. These were the poor kids without the opportunities. And they transformed themselves. They went from fighting with each other to having music competitions with each other, and creating community orchestras that were playing at a world-class level. And this spirit has gone everywhere. Everywhere that steel band music goes, you see it breaking down the barriers of age, of gender, of race, of ethnicity. And people coming together for a common cause of creating beautiful music together and enjoying themselves.
And you can only make beautiful music if you collaborate together.
It's just amazing. And when you see, and when I every year now that I come to Joburg and I see all the different people of Southern Africa coming together, and the next generation of kids, they're coming up and they're together. It's not a white thing and a black thing anymore. It's like all these kids together coming together to play music together and sing and dance and feel the power that they have as a group, doing things together. And music can be a revolutionary force, and I really believe in it.
And South Africa played a critical role in that direction in breaking down racial barriers.
Sure.
I mean, the change that I saw personally in Joburg happened as a result of creative people in particular working together across racial divisions and ultimately living together, even against the laws of the country at that time. But you are a regular visitor to South Africa, and you've got a huge following here in South Africa. People love attending your shows and look forward to buying your CD. We've got a new project underway.
I have a brand new album out. It's called This One for Raf. It's dedicated to my friend Raf Robertson, who passed away last year. And it's a jazz album. There are 2 CDs. One's a quintet with it's my Caribbean Parisian group. It's my French group, which is 2 people from Cuba and 2 from Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. And it's piano, bass, drums, percussion, and myself. And then there's a duet CD also with myself and the piano player. And it's a contrast from what I've been doing. I've been mostly working on steel band music, where I've been recording and orchestral music that I wrote for Steel Band, which I then go out and teach in universities and steel bands all over the world.
And you've worked with South African musicians as well.
Yeah, I love coming here and playing. I never bring anybody anymore. The first time I came here, I brought somebody came with me, and since then I realized I just need to go down there and play with the guys there. The band I have here, for instance, Louis Mhlanga and either Thomas Dyani or Tlale McKenna or Denny Lalouette, Rob Watson. Most of those guys have been playing with me since 1999. And
Louis is always there, isn't he?
Louis is irreplaceable and one of my favorite people and musicians in the entire world, and and I always look forward to coming here and playing.
Well, I must thank Louis and all those performers that we finally got to know you and then spend time with you and even get this interview with you.
Yeah, well, anytime.
And everything of the best to you.
You too.
Andy, we hope to see you again visiting South Africa, but much appreciated that you've also got time. You spend time with the kids here.
I appreciate it. I'll be back soon, and all the best to you on this show.
Andy Narell, over 30 years in music, played Steelpans in the streets of New York, went on to become professional jazz performer. Then it took him away to France, Paris, and he became a friend of South Africa. down the line and recently visited the country. And we hope you enjoyed this interview. Until next time, good night to you.